The ache began not in Elias's muscles, though they certainly protested after 3 days of hard hiking, but deeper, in the bone, a weariness that seeped into his thoughts, making them heavy and slow. The sun, a molten coin dropping below the jagged silhouette of the distant peaks, painted the sky in bruised purples and dying oranges. He needed to make camp, now. His map showed a small, supposedly sheltered clearing just ahead, nestled amongst a stand of unusually old, thick-trunked pines, marked quaintly as Whispering Grove. It sounded peaceful, sheltered, exactly what his exhausted body craved. He pushed through a final curtain of ferns, their damp fronds cool against his face, and stepped into the grove. It was perfect, almost unnervingly so. A circular space, carpeted with a thick, springy layer of fallen pine needles that muffled his footsteps instantly. Towering pines, ancient and gnarled, formed a natural cathedral around him, their branches interlocking high above like praying hands, filtering the last vestiges of twilight into soft, shifting beams. The air was still, heavy with the scent of resin and damp earth, cooler than the surrounding forest. A profound quiet settled over the place, the usual chirps and rustles of woodland life seemingly holding their breath just beyond the perimeter of the old trees. Relief washed over Elias, potent and immediate. He shrugged off his heavy pack, the thud surprisingly muted on the soft ground. Yes, this was it, a sanctuary. He unrolled his sleeping bag and mat, laid out his meager provisions for a cold meal. He was too tired for a fire tonight. The silence was profound, almost liquid. It filled his ears, a welcome balm after the constant crunch of leaves and his own ragged breathing on the trail. He sat leaning against the smooth, cool bark of one of the giants, chewing mechanically on a protein bar. The colors faded from the sky, replaced by the deep indigo of true night. Stars began to prick the darkening canvas, visible through the gaps in the canopy. It was beautiful, peaceful, or was it? As his senses, no longer dulled by the exertion of hiking, began to sharpen in the stillness, he noticed the quality of the silence. It wasn't empty. It was expectant, holding, like the pause before a conductor brings down his baton. A faint breeze stirred the upper branches far above. The sound wasn't the usual rustle of leaves, the gentle shushing he knew so well. It was softer, more complex, a sibilant sighing, like hundreds of hushed voices sharing secrets just beyond the range of hearing. Shh. It's still. Elias tilted his head, straining to listen. Just the wind, he told himself. Wind sounds different in old, dense pines. His ears were playing tricks. Tired, like the rest of him, he took a long drink from his water bottle, the coolness grounding him. He finished his meal, packed away the wrappers meticulously, leave no trace. The grove was darker now, the moonlight struggling to penetrate the thick canopy. Shadows pooled at the base of the trees, deep and impenetrable. His gaze drifted across the clearing, settling on the trunk of the pine opposite him. The bark, deeply furrowed and patterned by age, seemed to shift in his peripheral vision. He focused, blinking. Just bark. Rough, textured, ancient bark. And yet, as he looked away, the impression returned. The patterns weren't random. They coalesced, momentarily, into something resembling faces? Not human faces exactly, but impressions. Elongated ovals with dark knots like vacant eyes, drooping lines like mournful mouths. He shook his head, rubbing his eyes. Pareidolia, seeing patterns in randomness, a common trick of a tired mind in low light. Nothing more. He zipped himself into his sleeping bag, the familiar enclosure a small comfort. He lay on his back, staring up at the fragmented view of the night sky. The whispering sound returned, a little more persistent this time. It seemed to weave through the branches, a constant, soft susurrus that was both calming and deeply unsettling. It wasn't just the wind in the needles. It sounded like the needles themselves were murmuring. Listen. So close. Was he imagining words? Surely not. Exhaustion was a potent hallucinogen. He closed his eyes, willing sleep to come, to silence the strange symphony of the grove. He focused on his breathing, the slow rise and fall of his chest. Inhale peace, exhale tension. But the whispering seeped in. It wasn't loud, but it was pervasive, inescapable. It seemed to curl around his thoughts, a gentle insistence that refused to be ignored. He pulled the sleeping bag tighter around his ears, but the sound wasn't entirely external anymore. It felt like it was resonating inside his head, a vibration as much as a sound. He opened his eyes again. The darkness felt thicker now, more substantial. The fragmented stars seemed impossibly distant. He glanced again at the tree trunk opposite. The faces were clearer now, undeniable. Multiple faces overlapping, etched into the ancient wood. Their not eyes fixed not on him, but somehow aware of him. He felt a prickle crawl up his spine. This wasn't just tiredness. He sat up slowly, the rustle of his sleeping bag sounding unnaturally loud in the charged quiet. He scanned the perimeter of the grove. Nothing moved. No glowing eyes, no snapping twigs indicating an animal. Just the towering, silent sentinels of pine and that incessant soft whispering from above. But was it only from above? He held his breath, listening with an intensity that bordered on pain. The whispering wasn't just in the canopy. It seemed to emanate from the very air around him, from the ground beneath him. A low, multi-layered murmur, like a crowded room heard through a thick wall. Here, always here, listening, waiting. The words were clearer now, coalescing from the sibilant sounds. Or was his mind desperately trying to make sense of the noise, imposing meaning where there was none? He couldn't be sure. The uncertainty was a cold knot in his stomach. He thought about packing up, leaving right now, hiking through the dark. But the thought filled him with a different kind of dread. The surrounding forest, which had felt normal just hours ago, now seemed menacing, alien. The grove, despite its unsettling nature, felt contained. Leaving felt like stepping from a haunted room into an infinitely larger haunted house. He lay back down, forcing himself to stay calm. It's the isolation, he thought, the dark, the fatigue. It's amplifying natural sounds, making me see things. He tried to focus on rational explanations. Old trees creak. Wind makes strange noises. Bark has patterns. A twig snapped, not far away, just outside the circle of his immediate awareness, maybe 10 feet off. Loud, sharp, deliberate. Elias froze, every muscle tensed. Animal? Deer? Bear? He strained his ears, listening for follow-up sounds. Rustling leaves, heavy breathing, Footsteps. Nothing. Only the whispering, which seemed to pause for a beat after the snap, then resumed, perhaps a fraction lower, more intimate, noticed, awake, listening back. His heart hammered against his ribs. He slowly reached for the heavy-duty flashlight beside his sleeping bag, his fingers closing around the cool metal. He didn't turn it on yet. The sudden beam might provoke something, or worse, reveal something he wasn't prepared to see. He stayed utterly still for what felt like an eternity, scanning the darkness, his eyes aching from the strain. The faces in the bark seemed to watch him with ancient, indifferent patience. The whispering continued, a constant, maddening presence. It wasn't aggressive, not yet. It felt curious, observational, like the grove itself was a single ancient consciousness, and he was a novel stimulus within it. He risked a quick glance at his watch. Only midnight. Hours until dawn. Hours trapped in this listening, whispering place. Another sound, softer this time. A faint scraping like claws on bark, or perhaps fingernails. It came from the base of a tree to his left. He turned his head slowly, slowly. The darkness was absolute in that direction. Closer now. Feel it. Feel the air move. He couldn't feel anything move, but the suggestion planted by the whispers made the skin on his arms crawl. He imagined cold air displaced by an unseen form, felt phantom pressure against his sleeping bag. Panic began to bubble in his chest, cold and sharp. He fought it down. Panic was useless here. He needed to think, but thinking was hard when the air itself seemed to be murmuring insidious suggestions into his ears. He decided he had to use the flashlight. Not knowing was becoming worse than knowing. He braced himself, thumb on the switch. He would sweep it quickly around the perimeter, then switch it off. Quick look, gather information. He flicked it on. The powerful beam cut through the darkness, startlingly bright. He swept it left. Nothing but tree trunks, their bark starkly illuminated. The faces suddenly looking like just patterns again under the harsh light. He swept it right. More trees, the thick carpet of needles, his own small campsite. Nothing. He swept it straight ahead towards where the twig had snapped. Nothing. Relief, potent but short-lived, washed over him. There was nothing there. Just trees, shadows, and his overwrought imagination fueled by the strange acoustics of the grove. He was about to switch off the light when the whispering changed. It stopped being a generalized murmur. It focused, converged, right above him, not from the branches, but from the air directly overhead. And it wasn't just whispers anymore. It was a voice, a composite voice made of countless hushed tones blended together, yet speaking as one. It was ancient, dry, and chillingly clear. "You brought the light," the voice rustled, not loud, but seeming to fill the entire grove. Resonating in his bones. "We preferred the dark. We see better in the dark." Elias's hand trembled, the beam wavering. His breath hitched in his throat. He couldn't speak, couldn't move. "You listen," the voice continued, the sound like dry leaves skittering across stone. "Few truly listen anymore. They come, they rest, they ignore. But you hear us." He forced himself to look up, into the beam of his own flashlight. There was nothing there but empty air, particles of dust dancing in the light. Yet the voice was undeniably there, directly above him. What are you?" Elias managed to choke out, his voice a ragged whisper that was instantly swallowed by the grove's own murmuring. A sound that might have been dry, collective laughter rustled through the pines. "We are the grove," the voice sighed. "We are the roots, the bark, the needles. We are the memories held in the wood. We are the watchers, the listeners. We have been here since the first seed fell, and we will be here when the mountains crumble." The flashlight beam flickered. Elias fumbled with it, his fingers numb with cold and fear. Was the battery dying? "The light fades," the voice observed, almost conversationally. "Good. Better for listening. Better for seeing." Elias frantically tried to switch the flashlight off, then on again. It sputtered, glowed weakly, then died completely, plunging the grove back into profound darkness, save for the faint moonlight filtering through the canopy. The whispering surged back instantly, louder now, more insistent, swirling around him like a vortex. He could feel it pressing against him, a tangible weight in the air. See him now. Yes, clearer. The fear tastes like sap. He scrambled backwards, trying to put his back against the solid trunk of the pine he'd rested against earlier. Its bark felt different now, not smooth and cool, but rough and disturbingly yielding like ancient dry skin. The faces he'd seen earlier seemed to press out from within the wood, their knot eyes swirling with shadow. He closed his eyes tightly, pressing his hands over his ears, but it was useless. The whispering was inside his head now, a roaring chorus. It wasn't just words, it was images, sensations, the slow growth of roots through centuries of soil, the feeling of rain on leaves, the patient observation of countless sunrises and sunsets, the passing of animals, the brief, fleeting lives of humans who wandered through, and sometimes stayed. Stay, listen with us, become part of the story. He felt a strange lethargy creeping over him, a seductive pull towards stillness. The fear remained, a cold bedrock beneath the surface, but it was being overlaid with something else, a profound, ancient weariness that wasn't his own, the desire to simply stop, to lie down on the soft needles and let the whispering wash over him, through him, to become another memory held within the wood. His breathing slowed, his muscles, already exhausted, relaxed against his will. The boundary between himself and the grove felt thin, permeable. He could almost feel the slow, deep pulse of the ancient trees, the network of roots beneath the soil, like a vast, interconnected consciousness. Sleep now. Listen. Just listen. The whispering softened, returning to the sibilant murmurs from before. But now they felt intimate, comforting, in a terrifying way. Like a lullaby, sung by something impossibly old and fundamentally inhuman. Elias's eyes fluttered open one last time. The moonlight seemed brighter now, or perhaps his eyes had adjusted fully to the dark. The patterns in the bark of the surrounding trees swirled gently, the faces within seeming less like masks and more like reflections. He saw his own fear mirrored in those dark knots, his own weariness in the drooping lines. He was lying on his back again, though he didn't remember moving. The springy pine needles felt soft beneath him, almost like a welcoming embrace. The air was cool and still, carrying the scent of resin and damp earth, and something else, something indescribably ancient. The whispering continued, a gentle tide washing over him. It wasn't demanding anything now. It was simply there. A fundamental sound of the grove, like the rustling of leaves or the creak of branches, but imbued with consciousness. He closed his eyes. The urge to fight, to flee, had drained away, leaving only a vast emptiness and the pervasive sound. He listened. He let the whispers fill him. He felt his own thoughts dissolving, merging with the ancient murmur of the grove. Did he fall asleep? Or did he simply become part of the listening? The first rays of dawn eventually filtered through the canopy, painting the grove in pale, tentative light. The air warmed. Birds began to sing, hesitantly at first, then, with more confidence, just beyond the circle of ancient pines. Inside the grove, the thick carpet of needles lay undisturbed, save for the impression of a sleeping bag and a discarded backpack. Of Elias, there was no sign. But if you were to stand there, in the quiet heart of the whispering grove, especially as twilight begins to fall, if you were to stand very still and just listen, you might hear it. Beneath the sighing of the wind in the high branches, beneath the rustle of unseen things in the undergrowth, you might hear a faint, new undertone in the ancient chorus. A human whisper, perhaps, forever lost and listening, woven into the timeless voice of the grove. Listen closely now as you drift towards sleep. Can you hear it? The wind outside your window. Does it just rustle, or does it whisper?